Again, welcome to the purpose of this book, David G. and David G. Tonight, we are in our final chapter. We are in chapter 11. That's A Vision for You on page 151. And probably, David, we didn't talk about this, but probably a good idea if you just give us a little recap of maybe the past three chapters, sort of what we studied and how we arrived at this point. You good to do that?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm David, a recovered alcoholic and drug addict. Thanks, David. So welcome everyone tonight. So where we ended up at is we did the chapter working with others, and then we wanted to know there's three parts of the 12 step. The first part is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of this step is the promise. The charge is that we carry this message to the alcoholic who still suffers, and the challenge is that we carry this message, or the challenge is to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Well, where's the directions at for doing practicing these principles in all our affairs? Well, in my experience, they're in the next three chapters that we just finished studying today. So, or just in the past few months. So, we went to chapter two wives. We found out that Bill wrote that chapter. Lois really wanted to, but he didn't allow that to happen. So he wrote it from a fictitious woman's point of view. He did it to sell books. That's why he did that chapter. He really did. And, there's some chauvinistic stuff in there. I'm not going to go over that. And then we got into, our next chapter, the family afterwards. So we can find spiritual principles and how to practice them throughout these three chapters. And that's what we're looking for the whole time, just to see how do I practice these principles in all my affairs. So the directions for the chapter two wives, yes, it's pointed to wives, but I don't read it like that. I read it that these are my spiritual principles. I'm the one that suffers from a spiritual malady and unrecovered alcoholism. So I need to learn how to practice these principles in all our affairs. One of the spiritual principles is never to argue. Okay. When pause when agitated or doubtful, don't be fault finding, assassinating character. Bill gives us directions on what not to do. And if I practice these principles, on all my affairs, these spiritual principles, I will have a healthy relationship. But it all comes about for me having a relationship with a power greater than myself. That's what the goal is for me, to always have access to this power in my life, not to be blocked by pomp or circumstance. That's what blocks me from it: fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity, all these other things, resentment that the book describes to us. And then as we get into the family afterwards, so the family suffered. As I was out there, maybe they don't accept me back. Maybe I'm doing too much work with the fellowship, and maybe they're jealous of all that kind of stuff. I have to find some balance, is what I'm getting to. I had to find some balance because the family can get resentful too. I need to communicate with my family. Yes, I need to put God first, my sobriety second. And because anything I put in front of my sobriety, I've always lost. And I don't know if you guys can relate to that, but anything I've ever put in front of my sobriety, I've lost. So, and then we finished up this past week with chapter two, the employers. Another way to read that chapter is to sponsors, and how I can practice the steps with the sponsee. And there's some good suggestions and good ways to look for spiritual principles in that chapter. Also, um, I don't know. I guess that's where we're at. And the nice thing about what we're getting into now is this is what David and I do, and I'm certain that you guys do it too when you carry the message. Is yes, first we qualify the alcoholic or the drug addict to find out if they really belong in Alcoholics Anonymous, if they're a real alcoholic, or if they're just a hard drinker. You can get free finding out both ways. And if you concede your innermost self that you're a real alcoholic, we quickly work through the steps, because of the window of opportunity, as Howard Ebert would say, slam shut quickly. We just don't know when it's going to slam shut. So as we do that work and we get through it, David and I, at the end of our treatment center, when we go into treatment centers, we try to give them a vision, try to give them a vision of hope, because they're probably a hopeless variety. And I pray that they are, because if I'm not a hopeless variety, why would I do this work? If I think that I could come up with some kind of a plan on my own, which I didn't try them all, but all the ones I tried did not work. So a vision is a hope is a vision beyond my present circumstances. We have a whole chapter dedicated, chapter 11, to a vision for you.
Love that. Vision beyond my present circumstances. Okay, so let's talk about that vision. Chapter 11, page 151, a vision for you. For most normal folks, drinking means conviviality, companionship, and colorful imagination. It means release from care, boredom, and worry. It is joyous intimacy with friends and a feeling that life is good. But not so with us in those last days of heavy drinking. The old pleasures were gone. They were but memories. Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. There was an insistent yearning to enjoy life as we once did, and a heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle of control would enable us to do it. There was always one more attempt and one more failure.
Yeah, I looked up conviviality. Can you hear me okay?
We sure can.
Okay. The good humor or mirth indulged in at entertainments of a convivial character.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay. It starts out by saying for most normal folks. So that disqualifies me right away. There's nothing normal for me whatsoever. I don't do anything normal at all. Drinking meat, but relate to this. Early on, we all started when we were 12 or 13 or 14 years old for the most part. I'm just throwing out a random number. And it meant conviviality, it meant companionship, it meant a colorful imagination. It means release from care, boredom, and worry. And if I'm full of boredom, that probably means that I'm full of self. And if one of my grandkids or my kids were little, they're like, I'm bored. And I'm like, go play with a friend, go do something, go play with a friend, because that means that you're thinking of yourself. You're having a pity party and worry. And the book also warns us about worry, how dangerous that could be in the 11th step in our evening review. We can't be of help to anyone else when we follow that. So it is a joyous intimacy with friends. Yes, indeed. And feelings of that life is good. My dad was an alcoholic, died indirectly from alcoholism. He had diabetes, didn't take care of himself, and had a horrible way out. But he was the leader of the band. He would go to the bar and he would hold court. And he was funny. He was full of conviviality, and everybody loved him. He was just an entertainer by nature. You give him a couple of drinks and he was like the light switch went on, and that was his story. But they progressively go quickly here, but not so with us in those last days of heavy drinking. Yeah, heavy drinking. Why? Because once I start, I break out in craving. I set out to have 2, and I have 22, at least 22, and then the old pleasures are gone. So now alcohol owns me. Quicksand surround me all the way around page 8 in Bill's story. Alcohol is my master. Excuse me. They were but memories. And those memories are become part of the obsession because I think that I can have a drink or two. And it's a lie. I drink on the lie, based on the lie, and I get drunk because I break out in craving. Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. Once an alcoholic, always going to be an alcoholic. If I, at 25 plus years, if I pick up a drink today, and I've had this thought, guys, I don't know if anyone else has had this thought, maybe I've overblown the situation. I know I go to a lot of meetings, I sponsor a lot of guys, I got a relationship with God. My life is freaking unbelievable, dude. I mean, unbelievably full of freedom. But the thought, and it's just a thought, it's not the obsession, comes in my mind. It's like, maybe you've overblown this a little bit. You probably could have a couple drinks now. It's been 25 years. That's a lie. That's a lie. Because I know what happens to me when I pick up a drink. I break out in craving. And you don't pick up just like that. It doesn't happen that way. It comes, the malady comes alive and well. I'm irritable, restless, and discontent. I'm full of self-pity, full of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking. And then the obsession comes back, and then I pick up the drink and I break out in craving. So never could we recapture the great moments of the past. There was an instance of yearning to enjoy life as once did, and heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle of control would enable us to do it. That means human aid. Maybe I could stop because my wife, we could just have, a mimosa at brunch. She can have a mimosa at brunch. I can't have a mimosa at brunch because after that, I'm going to find a dope dealer. And I haven't seen a dope dealer in 25 years. I tell you what, I will find one. I promise you that. I will burn it down till I find that dope dealer.
Not
And
that
then
hard. Not that
no,
hard.
okay, I'm not seeking.
Yeah.
There's always one more attempt, and guess what? And David uses this analogy. Anyone here stop 10,000 times? I'm stealing your thunder here, but then you
Okay.
started 10,001. That's all I got.
Thanks, David. So, as I like to do a lot of times as we're reading along here, just sort of check in on the context. Where's Bill leading us? So, David did that nice little summary for us where we got, through step 12, and then we spent these 3 chapters really talking about how we go out in the world and practice these, practice all of these principles in all our affairs and so much in our marriages and our partnerships with our families in the workplace, right? And then so we get this, the 8 pages of the doctor's opinion and then 150 pages of instruction and of sort of context. And now what's happening, we're saying as a result of all of this, as we've absorbed what we now know and understand, and ideally we've done all the work along the way. So it's like, what next? Well, what next is this vision, right? This vision beyond my present circumstances, a vision for me and for David and Rob and Janice and Cheryl and everybody else. It's a vision for all of us. So what does a vision look like? So Bill said in the context, he's saying, okay, so if everything we've been learning about alcoholism, the powerlessness is over that, and most importantly, our spiritual malady, our unmanageability, let's go back to drinking just for a moment. He's saying, hey, for the record, if we hadn't made this clear, for most normal people, alcohol kind of a good thing, right? It's because they have a drink, or David talks about his wife has half a glass of wine and then pours it back into the bottle, which is absolute craziness, right? People have a drink, maybe they have 2, and it's like, woo, I'm drunk, they're having fun, and God bless them. God bless them. Wouldn't it be nice if we could drink that way? Yes, but guess what? We can't, and that's okay. There's no why. It just is what it is. So for normal people, they're having conviviality, like Janice told us. It's fun, companionship, right? Bonding, colorful imagination. You're just having fun, unwinding, getting the benefits of alcohol that normal people can enjoy. Release from care, boredom, and worry. I always talk about end of a hard week. I want a couple of stiff drinks to take the edge off. Joyous intimacy with friends. Guys, remember, any of you guys, I don't know, maybe some of you guys were blackout, allergic drinkers from the beginning. I wasn't, I was like, the book talks about, at some point, I lost control of my drinking. But when I was younger, drinking was fun, right? You're like, oh, bro, I love you, man. And you're drunk and you're hugging each other, right? And all that stuff. That's what it's talking about. Joyous intimacy with friends and feeling that life is good. Everybody wants to drink, to have a couple of drinks, takes them out of their life, right? Feeling that life is good. But not so with us in those last days of heavy drinking. And I always say this when David and I were just at the treatment center on Friday night doing our first step talk, and when we're going through the bedevilments, right? We're prey to misery and depression. I always say the same thing. If you are anything like me, at the end, right, I would wake up in the morning and I would say to myself, not again. Not again what? Not again anything. Not again everything. I was so flipping miserable, right? My alcohol and my cocaine and my Xanax and Valium and everything else I was powerless over and abusing at the time, those last days were bad. I was very powerless. I was in over my head and I was so miserable, guys. So miserable, right? All pleasures were gone. It used to be pleasurable. Again, I couldn't tell you when I look back when these things happened, but here's how it went for me. Maybe some of you guys relate. What happened was I used to go out to the bars, right? I used to go out to drink and chase women, do a little cocaine, whatever. So I went from spending all night in the bars and the clubs to going out to the bars and the clubs and then doing the Houdini, which is where I left without saying goodbye because I just wanted to go home and drink and drug by myself. To at the end, I didn't even bother going out anymore. I just got my drugs, locked the doors, turned the phone off. Right? Like that was my progression. I didn't see it coming. I couldn't tell you what years it happens. I just know that was my experience, right? So those old pleasures were gone. They were but memories. And I still have some good memories, but I don't romanticize them, because for all my good memories, I got tenfold bad memories, at least tenfold, maybe 100-fold, right? And here's, how does this one hit home, guys? Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. I'd have to go back to probably early college, because it was probably in the middle of college when things started to go, man, my second year, sophomore year, I think is when things really started to go downhill for me. When I think about how I was feeling, the misery and depression and things like that were setting in, right? So I couldn't recapture those great moments anymore. Instant yearning to enjoy life as we once did, and a heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle control would enable us to do it. Such a betrayal. Such a betrayal. My friend, my secret friend, my best friend, this thing that used to give me so much pleasure, yes, but so much security, right? In the doctor's opinion, it talks about like the sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks. I remember when I got the ease and comfort. That's what Bill's talking about here. So I went from getting ease and comfort from a few drinks to only getting the sense of ease and comfort to not being able to get any ease and comfort anymore. And I just wanted to recapture those days. There was always one more attempt and one more failure. And yeah, and David said it, and I'll just say it again. And it's the same thing. Every month at the treatment center, I ask the same questions. Or I do this when I'm giving a first step talk. Anybody swear off drinking or drugging forever? Anybody, come on, show of hands. Who's with me here? Anybody ever swear off? Right. Anybody swear off 10,000 times? Right. And didn't you start drinking again 10,001 times? Right. One more attempt and one more failure. And also, every attempt that I made, when I swore off, I was done. It's just like in Bill's story, right? Oh, my wife happily observed that this time I was serious. I was serious every time. And then it was even more deadly serious every time I picked up again. No power, no choice, no control. I lost it at some point. I had it when I was younger, but then I lost it. I don't know when. I don't know if something triggered it. I don't know if there was something in my body or in my mind or in my spirit, but one day I lost all control. The less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society, from life itself. What did we just say? What happened to my weekends, right? It's a perfect point in case. As we became, oh man, this is so well written, guys. As we became subjects of King Alcohol, notice the capital letters, the higher power. I'm sorry, I'm editorializing. Let me read. Sorry. I'm gonna have to go first on this one, David.
You go first.
All right. As we
Definitely.
became subjects of King Alcohol, shivering denizens of his mad realm, the chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down. It thickened, ever becoming blacker. Some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding, companionship, and approval. Momentarily, we did. Then would come oblivion and the awful awakening to face the hideous four horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. Unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand. Got anything, Janice or Rob?
Yes.
Come on in.
Well, I know Rob has a bunch of stuff in that one, but I just looked up denizens, of course. A stranger admitted to residence in a foreign country, specifically in English law, an alien who is made a subject by the king's letters patent, holding a middle state between an alien and a natural born subject, or number two, a dweller. There you go. That's all I got.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right. So as we read through the big book, there's passages that Bill writes that are kind of boring. There's some stuff that's a little hard to follow, the prosaic steel girder. And then there's some stuff that's pure poetry. Really, this paragraph is pure poetry. His ability in this paragraph to make me see what he's writing is maybe never better anywhere else in the book. The less people tolerated us, right, because of our behavior, because of the stuff that happened when we picked up and we broke out in craving, the more we withdrew from society, from life itself. Because again, I was of the thinking, what's the point? Why get thrown out of the bar? I'll just cut to the after effect and just not go to the bar. And by the way, I won't get like my ass kicked and I won't get thrown out into the parked car in the street by the bouncers. I'll go home without a black eye this week. All right, I'm just going to stay home. As we became subjects of King Alcohol, capital K, capital A. Why? What have we noticed previously in the book that we're always pointing out? When we see those capital letters, that's a higher power. It's a formal higher power, right? When we have father and principal and things like that. But this isn't the first time we've seen sort of a negative higher power. Remember in Bill's story, when he talks about men leaping from the towers of high finance, capital H, capital F, or maybe it's when Bill was talking about his heroes in finance, but it's capitalized because that was Bill's higher power then. That's the point of this here. I became a subject, a serf, a slave, a servant to my higher power, King Alcohol, King Cocaine, right? Queen Valium, as the list goes on. Shivering denizens of his mad realm, his crazy world. Right? I had to serve. I couldn't not, right? There was not another power to which I could serve and get what I needed. The chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down. So much misery and depression in that loneliness, guys. It thickened. What thickened? The vapor of loneliness thickened, right? So again, it's so visual. He's saying, I'm shivering. I'm surrounded by this metaphoric vapor of loneliness. My world is getting smaller and smaller. And as my world's getting smaller, the effect of the loneliness is getting thicker and deeper, right? Permeating my skin, getting into my soul. Some of us sought out sordid places. Ah, I loved this. Go find me a seedy bar, right? Go find me the latest like dark industrial techno club, not the ones where everyone's like fancy and wearing the fancy clubby clothes. No. I want the dirty, dingy ones where I was as likely to find a woman to hook up with as I was to get like beaten with a bat or a broken bottle or something, right? Like I loved watching those movies where they always show the people, oh man, look at that seedy, like they're always playing like, Marilyn Manson or that kind of 90s industrial type music. I'm like, man, if there's another place like that in Chicago, I'm going. There was a place like this. It was called The Exit. And actually another big famous place years ago is called Crowbar that I used to go to all the time. Dark, seedy, so much drinking, so much drugging, so many bad people up to bad stuff. I loved it, right? I felt so at home. And even if I didn't interact with anybody, which a lot of times I didn't, right? Because I was content just to drink and drug. I didn't need to make friends. I didn't need to chase women, right? I just wanted to be, in the dark, dingy place. So momentarily we did find some understanding, companionship, approval, right? Maybe among some other people, hard drinkers, hard drug users, and maybe other real alcoholics and addicts. So yeah, I find a little companionship. I find a little approval, people that were killing themselves like I was. But then comes the oblivion and the awful awakening. So when I'm coming to, right, I'd often be going for the better part of Friday and Saturday, and I'd pass out at some point by, 6 a.m., 7 a.m. Sunday morning, and then I come to Sunday night, 7 p.m. right after a run. And it's the Four Horsemen waiting for me in my apartment. Terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. Well, I'll let David dig into those a little bit. And unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand. Anybody here not completely understand what Bill's saying? Anybody here not live the same life that I did? And maybe you weren't in the clubs. Maybe you were in the bar, you were in the tavern, you were in the saloon, you were in the roadhouse, or you were just like me. After a while, you didn't even bother leaving the house. Lock the door, turn off the phones. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, so that first sentence, less people tolerated, the more we became withdrew from society. That wasn't by choice. People didn't want to hang around with me anymore. I was a real alcoholic drug addict, dude. Like they would go to me, dude, you're geeking, you're freaking me out, bro. Like I honestly, once I started, it might be 3 days, it might be 4 days. It would be more if I could go more. And I had to keep changing my group of friends. I hate to say it, but I had to keep lowering my standards until there was no one left. There was no one left to hang around. And I'm more like David said, I wanted to isolate. I wanted to be alone because I knew what alcohol and cocaine was doing to me. It was changing me from the insides out, and no one wanted to be around me. And I didn't want to be around me either, but I had no power, no choice, and no control. And then, yeah, this is so poetic what he's talking about here. You know, he's talking about the subject of king alcohol and shivering denizens of this mad realm, or mad realm is a kingdom or domain, confines a sphere or providence. It's like it's this place, and then he says this chilly vapor that it is loneliness settled down. It's like, dude, that's me. I'm in the basement of someone's place that I don't even know, and I don't know how many days I've been there. And the worst one I ever had, I think, was it was about 80 degrees when I went there, and I don't know how many days later it was, but when I left there, it was snowing out and it was colder than hell. So I thought I might have been there all for a season. I did not know. Well, the reason I did not know because the windows were all cardboarded up in this basement. Dude, it was horrible. Then I tried to go home, and my wife decided to have a yard sale with all my clothes. So I pull up, and all my clothes are in the front yard, all of them, and all the locks are changed, and no one was home, and the garage door didn't open. And I was finally, I was done. I just fell asleep in the snow in the backyard on the stoop. Just fell asleep. So back to this. To Bill's great writing here. It says it thickened, ever becoming blacker. I mean, I can just envision how, we live two lives in one. Like I sometimes I'm like, I can't believe how much power, choice, and control I didn't have. And I still don't have. Like, I need to always remember that. That's why working with others is so vital to the alcoholic. And then it says, these sorted places. What's a sorted place? Like David talks about, it's filthy, it's dirty, it's miserable. It's like, and I went to those bars because no one else would have me any longer, or I felt so uncomfortable being around other people because cocaine wasn't sitting well with me. I became very geeky and weird, and it was just these are the people I'm hanging around with now. Then it talks about momentarily we did then would come oblivion. Yeah. Every time now, every time. It wasn't like I could stop. I couldn't stop on my own power. And that awful awakening to face the hideous four horsemen, the terror, the bewilderment, the frustration, the despair. So this will be probably the only time I do go biblical on you guys. So a little bit of biblical here. So this is the four horsemen are figures in the book of Revelations. So another description of them are a personification of conquest, which is the white horse, war, which is the red horse, famine, which is the black horse, and death is the pale horse. That is a description of unmanageability. That is on death's doorstep. That is how close. This is not a game. People are dying in droves because they don't hear the proper message in the rooms, or they don't even make it to the rooms. I don't know what that number looks like because there's no way to measure that number. But boy, if we get an opportunity to get a new person, let's run to them. Let's approach them. They're not going to approach us. Let's carry this message. Let's qualify them. Let's ask them if they're done good and for all and they want to do this work, and then take them, do this shoulder to shoulder. Go through this process with them so they can have a relationship with God, so they can get free, and then they can carry the message. And those four horsemen of terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair are just a memory. Just like my drinking and drugging is a memory. It's true, it happened to me, but it doesn't own me any longer. I have freedom from the bondage itself. I have freedom from drinking. That it talks about and how it works, that alcohol is cunning, baffling, and powerful. I don't really believe that it is. It was. I know the truth about it, but I had to stay spiritually fit or it will become cunning, baffling, and powerful, which goes back to my original statement at 25 plus years of sobriety. And the thought comes to my mind, maybe you could have a couple. Probably not as bad as you thought it was, dude. No, it's going to be as bad as I thought it was. And you know what? Every time I've ever experienced this with other people, I was 1 month sober, and I went to a meeting. It was Thanksgiving because my anniversary is right around Thanksgiving, and I went to a family dinner at my in-laws' house, and I promised my sponsor I would go to a meeting that day, with good reason, right? I'm at my in-laws. They don't really drink that much, but I'm itching things I'm scratching things that don't itch. Like, dude, I'm freaking out. And so I went to a meeting, and there's a guy there, just blew me away. He had 20 years of sobriety. He drank again. I was like, oh my God, why would you do that? And I don't know how I had the courage, or maybe I made this up. I don't even know. Maybe I didn't even ask him. I don't remember now. I said, how did that happen? And he said, I stopped praying. I stopped calling my sponsor. I wasn't working any steps, and I stopped going to meetings, and it was in that order. I was like, oh my God. I was blown away. But man, I was lifted up at the same time, because I said to myself, man, I followed directions. I prayed. I went to a meeting. I did everything my sponsor said I should do that day. And then I called him on the way back. And then I called him 7 more times during Thanksgiving dinner, because I needed to, because I just felt so alone, and it wasn't their fault. This is a disease that becomes isolating. This is the disease that I become delusional, that I think I could be angry, that I could be full of resentment, I could be full of fear. I can't be full of those things, and I don't have the power to remove any of those things in my life. So the unmanageability today does not live in my life, because the bedevilments on page 52 and these 4 horsemen on 151, they're bookended, because the promises are right in between it on page 83, 84. Back on 85 and 86. I can feel all the promises in 9 and 10. I can experience these things, and I have experienced things. And there's promises throughout the book, so don't let me limit just to those promises. But just a review of what we did. We started out with discussing the world in which we lived during our drinking days. And they were fun, it became full of isolation and despair. It also describes the manner by which we grew exceedingly worse as our drinking intensified. These are my notes, by the way, you could probably tell. And at some point, the body becomes so wrecked that we simply cannot continue drinking or drugging. And that was my case, man. I couldn't stomach even drinking and drugging anymore, but I continued to do it. But the moment we feel better, yeah, you guys relate to this? Wait for it. The obsession returns with vengeance. As painful as it was, we almost find it laughable today that we retreated ourselves so horribly. And here's the funny part. That's funny now. It wasn't funny then. Yeah. It's funny how alcohol treats alcoholism until it doesn't. That was my solution until one day it was my master. It was King Alcohol. And then I couldn't stop no matter how hard I tried on my own power.
Awesome. All right, let's keep going. Now and then a serious drinker, being dry at the moment, says, I don't miss it at all. Feel better, work better, having a better time. As ex-problem drinkers, we smile at such a sally. We know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. He fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take half a dozen drinks and get away with them. He'll presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. He cannot picture life without alcohol. Someday, he'll be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without it. Then he will know loneliness such as few do. He'll be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end.
I got one, Sally. Sally, an act of levity or extravagance, wild gaiety, frolic, which goes beyond ordinary rules, as a sally of youth, a sally of levity. That's it.
Thank you, Janice.
Yeah, let me hop in real quick here.
Yeah, please.
I'm going to make sure we understand what Bill's point is here. So we're saying, again, it's continuity here. So we're saying in the last paragraph, trying to relate and say, I think this is our experience. Things got really bad, really bad. Bill has this real beautiful poetry talking about how the loneliness overwhelmed us. And then, it went from loneliness to then terror and bewilderment and frustration and despair. And that was our path, right? So he's saying, okay, so we all had this horrible experience, but now and then a serious drinker, and I think Bill means a real or potential alcoholic, dry at the moment, physically sober, physically, not recovered, just physically sober, dry, says, I don't miss drinking. I'm fine, right? I'm done. I'm over it. And when he says, as people who are recovered, right, we sort of laugh at that grand gesture that the person's trying to make. In this whole, we know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark. This guy's just talking, right? Saying, oh, look, I'm not drinking at the moment. I'm fine. I don't even know why I was making such a big deal of it. But we know what's really going on is that's just talk on the outside. On the inside, dude wants to drink again. Absolutely wants to drink again, right? If he could get away with it. And ultimately, going to drink again. Presently, going to try the old game again. Because why? He's still overwrought with unmanageability and spiritual illness, right? He's not happy about being physically dry because, as David was just talking about, my solution for my alcoholism was alcohol until it wasn't. Like stopping drinking, physical sobriety is one of the worst solutions for alcoholism, right? That's what I always say at the beginning. The first few weeks are the hardest because all of a sudden I don't have my solution, and I'm not in a new relationship with God yet. So what do I have? I'm clinging to you guys, and I'm white knuckling it to hold on to hope I don't drink again. Everybody white knuckles at the beginning. Let's not turn our noses up at white knuckling. That's my only tool at the beginning. Holding on to you guys and holding on for dear life, right? So can't picture his life without alcohol. And I think we've heard this many, many times in meetings, right? Those of us who go to AA, I couldn't live with alcohol and I couldn't live without it. And it's kind of one of those things you hear over and over, but it's true, right? It's true. Wasn't working for me anymore. But does it mean that I stopped drinking because it stopped being effective? Well, not really. I just kept drinking, right? Kept drugging, kept the life up. To me, the alcoholic life was the only normal one. I didn't have another approach. So then you'll know loneliness such as few do. So we're coming back, right, to that chilling vapor of loneliness that's enshrouding us and getting thicker and thicker. And he'll be at the jumping off place. And I think this is as much figurative as it is literal. Remember Bill's story, people committing suicide, jumping from the towers, right, of high finance in New York. This was a thing, guys, right, on, what was it, Black Monday, Black Tuesday, whatever that day was, when the beginning of the Great Depression. He will wish for the end. Well, if I'm at the literal and figurative jumping off place and I'm wishing for the end, we know what he's talking about here, the supreme sacrifice, talking about wanting to die and maybe contemplating suicide. Go ahead.
All right, so I have some relatable stuff that I'm going to go to in the book, and it's a little bit lengthy. So, anyways, so it talks about, and David did a great job pointing out, now and then a serious drinker, so a hard drinker, potential alcoholic, and even as a real alcoholic who hasn't conceded to my innermost self yet, says to myself, I don't miss it at all. I feel better. I work better. Having a better time. I had those experiences. I would come into Cocaine Anonymous in the early 90s to put the fire out, to get mama off my back so I didn't lose my job, to give my body and my mind a break, for Christ's sake, to get the cops off my back. And I did that. And then it talks about, and this is a way to read this paragraph for me is related to the malady here. So we know our friend is like a little boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. So just this fallacy that everything's okay. Everything is not okay. I'm in untreated alcoholism, and he fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take a half dozen drinks and get away with it. He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. If I am not happy in my sobriety, remember alcohol, that's my solution. I will not be able to recall the pain of a day or week or month ago. I'll pick up again. I'm no power, no choice, no control. He cannot picture life without alcohol, and someday he'll be able to imagine life either with alcohol or without it. That is a recovered state of mind and body. Then he will know loneliness such as few do. He'll be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end. So I see this as related to Bill. Again, it's so poetic in how he writes stuff, and it's so real, and it hits me right in the heart. Go to page 21 in the second paragraph in the chapter, There's a Solution, and stay with me if you would. So this is going to describe Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. and I'm going to put it in third person here. So I'm going to change some of the language. He says, here's the fellow. So I am this fellow who has been puzzling you, especially in my lack of control. David does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. I am, David is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I am seldom mightily intoxicated. Not my, David, I am, have ways more or less insanely drunk. My disposition, while David's drinking, resembles my normal nature, but little. David would be the finest. I could be one of the finest people in the world. Yet let David drink for a day, and I becomes disgustingly, even dangerously antisocial. And David's positive genius for getting tight exactly at the wrong moment, particularly when some important decision must be made or an engagement kept. David is often perfectly sensible, so this is the relatable part to this paragraph, and well-balanced concerning everything except liquor. But in that respect, David is incredibly dishonest and selfish. See, it's not alcohol, it's not the problem. David is often possesses special abilities, skills, and aptitudes, and has a promising career ahead of him. Dude, I have worked at some amazing companies and made stupid money my whole life. And I burned it all to the ground. Back to the text. David uses his gift to build up a bright outlook, see, for his family and for myself. And then he pulls the structure down on his head by a senseless series of sprees. I am this fellow who goes to bed so intoxicated he ought to sleep around the clock. Yet early next morning, David searches madly for the bottle he misplaced the night before. Done that. Looking for that cocaine. Looking for that bottle. David can't afford it. David may have liquor concealed all over his house. I used to do that too, but I couldn't remember where I put it. And be certain no one gets the entire supply away from him to throw down the waste pipe. Man, well, my wife would that emptiness in my gut when my wife would find it and pour it all down the drain. Oh my God. I'm helpless now. I can't leave the house because I'm intoxicated out of my mind. And I can't go get any more. This empty feeling. Then it says, as matters grow worse, so the progression that we're talking about here, David begins to use a combination of high-powered sedatives, cocaine and alcohol, to quiet my nerves so David can go to work. I did that. I used to drive a semi, very intoxicated, very, very intoxicated. Then comes the day when David he simply cannot make it, and David gets drunk all over again. No power, no choice, no control. This is the real alcoholic now, guys. Perhaps David goes to a doctor and gives him a morphine or some other sedative, which help me taper off. Then he begins to appear at detoxes and sanitariums. So this is my story. This is see again how this all started. Nope, the malady is alive and well. I'm in untreated alcoholism. The obsession comes back without my permission, without my consent. It comes back with a vengeance, and I pick up and I'm off to the races again. I don't care how many 24 hours I got, but untreated alcoholism, I got no choice, no power, no choice, no control.
Thank you. All right, let's keep her going. We've shown how we got out from under. You say, yes, I'm willing. But am I to be consigned to a life where I shall be stupid, boring, and glum like some righteous people I see? I know I must get along without liquor, but how can I? Have you a sufficient substitute? Yes, there's a substitute, and it is vastly more than that. It is a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. There you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. Your imagination will be fired. Life will mean something at last. The most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. Thus we find the fellowship, and so will you.
You want to go first? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I circle the first three words in that paragraph. We have shown. I circle those because I need to be shown. Please don't tell me. I just don't get it. I don't comprehend well. You need to show me how we got out from under this. Like, show me by taking me through this work. You'll say, yes, I'm willing. So if I'm willing, it cracks the door open to an opportunity to get well. But am I to be consigned to a life where I shall be stupid, boring, glum, like some righteous people I see? I know I must get along without liquor, but how can I have you a sufficient substitute? If we go to page 132 in the first paragraph in the family afterward, we just read this about 5 weeks ago, probably. And this is the responsibility of me as a recovered alcoholic in this paragraph that I'm about to read. We've been speaking to you of serious, sometimes tragic things. We have been dealing with alcohol in its worst aspects, but we aren't a glum lot. If newcomers could see no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't want it. We absolutely is a must, insist is a must on enjoying life. We try not to indulge in cynicism over the state of the nation. Leave all that kind of stuff, those principles, leave all those liberties outside the room. Don't bring that shit in there. That's third tradition stuff. Don't be bringing in, politics into the room. Don't talk, guns or pro-life or pro-choice. Like none of that stuff belongs in the rooms of AA or CA. That I got my liberties back, as Billy Ann says, because of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I don't have the right to bring them in the rooms. So back to the text here that I was reading. We try not to indulge in cynicism of the state of the nation, nor do we carry the world's troubles on our shoulders. When we see a man sinking in the mirror, that is alcoholism. We give him first aid, triage them, place what we have at their disposal, the 12 steps to recovery. For his sake, we do not recount, almost relive the horrors of the past, but those of us who have tried to shoulder the entire burden and trouble of others find we are soon overcome by them. That's a warning, so I can't carry their burdens around with me here. But I am not a glum lot. Me as a recovered alcoholic should be like, I think, how does Chris Raymer say it?
Some beams for Jesus.
Some beams for Jesus, right? That's coming from a Jew. I'm just telling you. It's like, but yes, dude, we should be enthusiastic about the recovery that we have today. I need to give them that vision. That's the chapter we're in right now. So back to Vision for You, page 152 in the second paragraph. Yes, sir. So Bill says, have you a sufficient substitute? He asks a question, then he answers it like he always does. Yes, there's a substitute, and it's vastly more than that. It's a fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Oh my goodness, I love the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. I assume that you guys do too, or you wouldn't be here. Right? And I love coming to see my friends. I love you guys. You guys are like family to me. I don't want to live without you. I get excited to see you. If opportunities to present themselves that it's not just on TV here, that I get to see in person someday, that's even better. But the fellowship is the first thing that I got introduced to. Then I got introduced to recovery at the base of the triangle. Then I eventually got to the service portion of the triangle. So now I have some equal sobriety in my life. So then it says, there you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. Why? Because we have events. We do stuff. And please invite your families to come along too, at picnics, at bowling. Do those stuff, because don't be so dang selfish. It's not just about you. Let them enjoy that if they choose to come. If they choose to come. My wife usually comes. We've gone before. My kids were little, we brought them. We went to the picnics. I didn't know that many people, but man, I took that healthy choice. I just did it. I went anyways. And I met a lot of people, and people were so welcoming. Your imagination will be fired. That's the key thing that have to happen, because that means I'm thinking about myself. Life will mean something at last. So I'll have this usefulness that comes about me, the key to life, possibly. The most satisfactory years of existence lie ahead. So I've had some great sobriety up to this point, and I believe there's a lot more for me to experience, a lot more. I need to stay spiritually fit for that to happen. Then it says, thus we find fellowship, and so will you. That means that the first 100 found the fellowship. And we together can find this fellowship too. And it's probably the one thing that helped glued me to sobriety is people. I felt like when I go to a meeting, I try to identify, look for similarities, don't look for differences. There's so many differences. I try not even to listen to those differences, because I need to fit in. And if someone's introducing themselves as an addict at an AA meeting, I just listen to the alcoholic part, and it's just for traditional purposes again. And I'm not going to get into that. No lectures tonight. But I'm just so I'm
Tonight.
just yeah, no andas, at an AA meeting. At Cocaine Anonymous, you can say whatever the hell you want. They kind of get it, right? For me, anyways. It's all mind altering substances, guys. So we all qualify possibly. So that's my experience of the fellowship is a wonderful, wonderful, loving thing. I have all my sponsees over my house. They've been to my house. They met my wife. They met my kids. I think that's something that I need to engage in so that they can see. I'm not going to say normal. My family's normal. I'm trying to work on normal. Good, David.
Yeah, so I'll just add a little bit here. In the first part of the paragraph, though, am I consigned to a life where I should be stupid, boring, and glum? I mean, certainly not. Boring? I welcome boring. Life is not boring enough because life is challenging. It throws a lot of stuff at us, but in the way that I used to create chaos before I was recovered, I really crave stability now. Like I don't like wild swings from the norm, because that just happens naturally in life, right? So what is the substitute to my old friend alcohol, my old friend liquor? So yeah, we've got a substitute, but it's vastly more than that. A substitute is an equal replacement. We're not giving an equal replacement for intoxication. We are giving something that it can't even be compared. We are giving absolution and resolution and transformation of the entire psyche, of everything inside of me, in my head, my heart, and my gut, that starts below my scalp and goes down to just above the soles of my feet. Everything inside of me is going to change. Why? Because of my new relationship with God. I'm either going to find God for the first time and forge a powerful relationship with Him, or I'm going to take my existing relationship with God or a higher power and form a new relationship, right? How do I get that? Well, David was just sort of explaining how it goes for most of us. Well, I find it first in the fellowship at Alcoholics Anonymous. I come to some meetings and I'm like, oh man, I guess I'm not the only person who suffered like this. You guys all suffered the same way. I'm like, oh, I feel like I belong. And then if I'm desperate and I'm a real alcoholic, then I start asking, well, what do I need to do so I feel as good as you guys do? Right? And they say, well, you got to take these steps, right? And then I get with a sponsor or a step guide. I start taking these steps, and then I get this new relationship with God, and then I keep hanging out with the fellowship, and then eventually they say, hey, now get into service. And what's the easiest way to start getting into service? Not making coffee. The easiest way is to do what somebody just did for me. Take a newcomer through the steps. Put the fear aside. Man, we have made it so easy. We have so many powerful people today. I don't, David and I are always trying to be careful of ego, but we've gotten pretty good at taking people through the steps. I don't know if we do it the right way or the wrong way. I think it's right enough, and we've created little cheat sheets and recordings. So every time we get a new sponsee or someone with step guide, we take them through the steps and we're like, your turn. And they're like, oh my God, no, I'm going to kill somebody. And we're like, dude, just sit down, listen to the podcast together, and pause it every few minutes and say, do you understand what they're talking about? Because I think I do, and I can explain it if you don't. That's it. Get through the pages, the greatest hits of each step. Just get to it. And I'm going to take this a little bit sideways because David brought this up last week, and I realized I haven't done this in a while, so I'm going to do it tonight. I just want to read the next two lines, and then I want to talk about this. So the next two lines go, how is that to come about? Right? Finding the fellowship, and so will you. How is that to come about? You ask, where am I to find these people? But more importantly, you are going to meet these new friends in your own community, and most importantly, near you. Alcoholics are dying helplessly like people in a sinking ship. So here's what I want to talk about. And some of you guys maybe have heard me talk about this before in this study, or if you've heard me give a Zoom lead. Over the past several decades. So Alcoholics Anonymous is the largest 12-step fellowship, which shouldn't surprise anyone because it was the original 12-step fellowship. All these other ones, they're all based on AA, haven't been around as long. So AA has got about 2 million people globally. And that number has been up or down about 10%, but it really hasn't deviated that much for decades. Why have we plateaued? It's a great question, right? And I don't think any one person has an answer. But I have a proposal, and it's not even my original idea. This is from, I think this is from Myers R, Chris R's brother. Piss poor sponsorship. 2 million people in Alcoholics Anonymous is not enough, right? Even if we said all the other anonymouses together that say deal with addiction, so Narcotics Anonymous and Cocaine Anonymous, Heroin's Anonymous, I don't know, it's 200 plus altogether. I bet all those other fellowships combined couldn't be another 2 million people. Maybe it's not 4 million, who knows? But there's no way there's more than about 4 to 6 million people in 12-step addiction anonymous type fellowships today. There's 8 billion people on this planet. 10%, according to science, are expected to be alcoholics or addicts. That means there's 800 million people that should be in our anonymous fellowships, and our biggest one has 2 million. You guys see how we're basically 798,990,000, you know, I mean, like, we're short about 800 million members in our fellowships. So I started thinking a couple of years ago, how are we going to fix this? How can we get piss poor sponsorship to become amazing sponsorship? And how can we help these 800 million people? Well, I'm here to tell you tonight, there's about 30 of us, a couple people, stragglers, just maybe now that I'm grandstanding and lecturing, they split, but there's been about 30 of us studying here tonight. Okay. So here's the math. It occurred to me, if over the course of my entire recovery, and actually this Friday, I'm gonna have 21 years, right? Which is pretty cool. But over the course of my entire recovery, let's say I only effectively took 3 people through the steps and got them to God. Now, I've sponsored step guided dozens, hundreds maybe of people, but let's say I only did 3. So I sponsored Rob and Brett and Neetha. I get them through the steps and I say, okay, guys, now you got to pay it forward over the entire recovery. You just need to get 3 people effectively through the steps, get them to God, right? So you see, so each person that gets recovered just carries the message to 3 people. Right? And then each of them to 3 people, each of them, not 30 people each, not 300 people each, 3 people only. Over 21 years is what I'm saying, is all I have to do, theoretically. And if that goes 15 times down the line, so you guys remember exponents from like grade school math? So 3 to the 15th power, it's 3 times 3 times 3, 15 times. Do you know what 3 to the 15th power? So starting from me, sponsoring 3 people, getting them to God, and then 15 generations down line, it's 14,348,907 people that are now recovered and members of fellowship. Starting from me, we should have 6 to 7 times the total number of people we have in our fellowships, guys. And there's 30 of us here tonight. Do you know what 14,348,907 times 30 is? I'm going to tell you, because no, you don't know. There's no Rain Man here. Here's the number, guys. And you go, by the way, check this math after the meeting. Google 3 to the 15th power, and then take that 14,348,907 times 30. It's 430,467,210 people. Do you guys understand, from the 30 people here tonight, if we all say we're not going to be piss poor sponsors, we are going to take people quickly through the steps and then go back and take them line by line. And then we're also going to take them through the traditions, and then we're going to get them involved in general service. We can have 430 million people, which is more than half of those 800 million addicts and alcoholics out there that need our help. This meeting alone, this study alone, can solve half the global problem. This is our obligation, and it starts right in the community where alcoholics are dying. But what is our community today? We got brothers here from Southeast Asia. We got people in the UK. We got Canada. We got US. We got all over. We are a global neighborhood now. This is not about who's down the street. This is about who's on the other line of the Zoom call. This is the obligation of the 12th step. And anything less than that is unacceptable. This study, 430 million people, guys. Think about those numbers. Go Google it. We're done. All right.
Good job, David.
Thanks, buddy. I'm going to kill the recording.
Okay.